The wind howled through the empty streets, carrying the scent of rain-soaked pavement and old garbage. A small girl, barely 9 years old, sat huddled in a dark alley, her thin arms wrapped around her knees. Her clothes were torn, her feet bare, and her stomach growled so loudly she was sure it would wake the city. She had no home. No family. Just the cold, endless nights and the constant ache of hunger. Then she saw it. A wallet. It lay just a few steps away, thick and expensive looking, almost glowing under the flickering streetlight. Her heart pounded. Who leaves a wallet in a place like this? She crawled forward, hesitating before picking it up. Her fingers trembled as she opened it, and her breath caught in her throat. Money. So much money. More than she had ever seen in her entire life. $100 bills, neatly stacked, along with credit cards, a driver's license, and some business cards. She swallowed hard. This could change everything. She could buy food. Get a warm coat. Maybe even find a place to stay. But then, her eyes fell on the ID card inside. A man's face. Sharp features, dark hair, cold eyes. His name, Edward Blackwell, attorney at law. A lawyer. A powerful man. And just like that, something inside her told her this wasn't just about money. She could take the cash and disappear. No one would know. Or she could return it. Her stomach twisted. The right thing was obvious, but when you've spent your whole life being invisible, doing the right thing doesn't always mean surviving. She exhaled slowly and stood up. Decision made. She had to find this man. But as she stepped out of the alley, gripping the wallet tightly, a sleek black car screeched to a stop just a few feet away. The doors flew open. 2 men in dark suits stepped out, scanning the street. Their movements were sharp, dangerous, like they weren't just looking for something. They were hunting it. And then, one of them turned. His eyes landed on her. And just like that, she knew, they weren't searching for the wallet. They were searching for him. And now, they had seen her. The girl's fingers clenched around the wallet as the man in the dark suit locked eyes with her. He took a slow step forward, his polished shoes clicking against the wet pavement. His expression was unreadable, but there was something in his eyes, something cold. She took an instinctive step back. The other man, taller and broader, scanned the area, then muttered something under his breath. She couldn't hear the words, but the way he kept looking around told her everything she needed to know. They were searching for someone. And if they were looking for the wallet's owner, why did they look so dangerous? The shorter man tilted his head. "Hey, kid." His voice was smooth, but there was something sharp underneath. Something fake. She didn't move. "Come here for a second." He held up his hand, as if calling a stray dog. Her heart pounded. Every instinct screamed at her to run. But she forced herself to stay still. Running would make her look guilty. Running would make them chase her. Instead, she did something she'd learned from surviving on the streets: act like you belong, and people don't ask questions. So she pretended. She gave the man a confused look, like she had no idea what was going on. "Are you lost?" she asked, keeping her voice small. The man's mouth twitched into a forced smile. "Not at all. But you seem a little out of place." She shrugged. "I live around here." A lie. But they didn't need to know that. The taller man narrowed his eyes. "What's in your hand?" Her breath caught. She wasn't a good liar. She wasn't like the other kids who could trick people out of their wallets in seconds. So instead of answering, she did something bold. She turned her palm upward, showing them the wallet. The shorter man's face didn't change, but his fingers twitched. The taller man glanced at his partner, then at her. "Where did you get that?" She swallowed. found it on the ground. The shorter man stepped closer. "You should give it to us," he said. "It doesn't belong to you." She hesitated. Something was wrong. If they were good guys, they would have explained who they were. Maybe showed a badge. Said they worked with Mr. Blackwell, the lawyer. But they didn't. They just wanted the wallet. And that made up her mind. She took a small step backward, tightening her grip. "Is it yours?" she asked. The shorter man's fake smile disappeared. "No," he said. "But it's none of your concern." A slow fear started creeping up her spine. She had to get out of here. "I was gonna return it to the lawyer," she blurted. "Since it's his." The moment the words left her mouth, both men stiffened. And she knew, that was the wrong thing to say. The taller man cursed under his breath. The shorter man's face twisted into something unreadable. "Kid," he said, his voice lower, sharper. "Give me the wallet." Something inside her snapped. She spun on her heel and ran. The men shouted behind her, but she didn't stop. She darted into the alley, heart hammering against her ribs. She could hear them chasing her. Their footsteps pounded against the pavement. They were faster, stronger. But she was small. She knew the streets better than they did. She twisted around a corner, diving between dumpsters, her breath ragged. If they caught her, she didn't know what they would do. All she knew was that she couldn't let them have this wallet. Not until she found out why they wanted it so badly. And not until she found Edward Blackwell. This part builds suspense, showing that the girl is smarter than she looks, but also in danger. The men aren't just normal guys looking for a lost wallet, they are something else. And now, she's being chased. The girl's lungs burned as she ran through the dark alleys, her bare feet splashing through puddles. The cold night air sliced against her skin, but she couldn't stop. Not with them behind her. She didn't dare look back, but she could hear them, the heavy footsteps, the sharp commands whispered between them. They were trying to trap her. She needed a way out. Up ahead, she spotted a rusted fire escape ladder, barely hanging onto the side of a brick building. Without thinking, she jumped and grabbed the bottom rung. The metal was slick with rain, but she pulled herself up with all the strength her tiny arms could manage. As soon as she reached the first landing, she heard one of the men skid to a stop below. "There," the taller one barked. She climbed faster. Halfway up, a gunshot cracked the night air. The bullet struck the metal just inches from her foot. Sparks flew. She bit down a scream and kept climbing. Faster, faster. Reaching the roof, she hauled herself over the edge and rolled onto her back, gasping for air. The city stretched out before her, tall buildings, glowing windows, streets far below. She had escaped the alley, but now what? The men weren't far behind. She could hear them climbing. She had seconds. She scrambled to her feet and sprinted across the rooftop. Her eyes darted around for an escape route, something, anything. Then she saw it. Another building, just across the alley. A jumpable distance. Maybe. Her pulse thundered. If she missed, she wouldn't get a second chance. Behind her, a head popped over the roof's edge. No time to think. She ran full speed and leaped. For a second, she was weightless, soaring through the air. Then, bam! She hit the other rooftop, rolling to absorb the impact. Her shoulder screamed in pain, but she was alive. She didn't stop. She ran. She had no idea where she was going, but she knew one thing: she had to get far away from those men. She sprinted across the rooftop and found another fire escape leading down. She climbed down as fast as she could and landed in a narrow street. For a moment, there was silence. She held her breath. The men weren't following. Had she lost them? She crept deeper into the city, sticking to the shadows. Her hands shook as she clutched the wallet to her chest. What was inside this thing that made them want it so badly? She ducked into a deserted bus stop, finally allowing herself to breathe. The street was empty. The only sound was the hum of distant traffic. She opened the wallet again. The money was still there. The credit cards. The ID. And then she noticed something strange. A thin, metallic card, buried behind the others. She pulled it out. It wasn't like the plastic cards. It was smooth, cold, and had no writing on it. She turned it over in her fingers, and it lit up. A faint blue glow pulsed from the surface, as if it had recognized her touch. Her breath caught. This wasn't normal. This wasn't just some lawyer's credit card. This was something else. And she had a feeling. The men weren't after the wallet. They were after this. The girl stared at the glowing metal card in her palm, her breath shallow. The blue light pulsed softly, like a heartbeat, reflecting off her dirt-streaked fingers. This wasn't a normal credit card. It recognized her touch. She swallowed hard. The men weren't chasing her because of the money in the wallet. They wanted this. A cold chill ran through her. Why? She glanced around, making sure no one was nearby, then pressed a finger against the smooth surface. The glow flickered. And then, letters appeared. Not printed. Not engraved. They simply formed out of the light. Access denied. User not recognized. She sucked in a breath. It could talk. She flipped it over, but the other side was blank metal. No numbers, no names, no symbols, except one. A tiny, barely visible engraving near the bottom. Blackwell and Associates. Her pulse quickened. The lawyer's name. This belonged to him. And if she had it, that meant he had to be in danger. She looked up at the towering city skyline. Somewhere out there, Edward Blackwell was missing. And she had the one thing everyone was looking for. Her grip tightened. She had to find him. But how? A gust of wind rattled the bus stop sign above her. The streets were mostly empty now, the city settling into its usual late-night quiet. She needed a plan. She pulled out the business cards tucked into the wallet. Most were boring: banks, corporate offices, legal contacts. But one stood out. A small, black card with gold lettering. It had no phone number, no address. Just a name. K. Aldridge. Private Security. Security. Her heartbeat quickened. Maybe this person knew something. Maybe they worked with Blackwell. Maybe they could help. She had no phone, no way to call. But she knew one thing: people like this worked in expensive places. And there was only one part of the city where someone like Blackwell or this Aldridge would be. The financial district. She took a deep breath. It was a long walk. And she had no idea if she was walking into even more danger. But she was done being scared. She stuffed the wallet into her pocket, slipped the glowing card inside, and stepped out into the night. An hour later. The financial district was different from the rest of the city. Cleaner. Brighter. Even at night, the streets here glowed with neon reflections on wet pavement. The buildings were sleek, glass towers that stretched high above her. People in expensive suits still walked the sidewalks, some talking on phones, some stepping into black cars. This wasn't a place for someone like her. And yet, she spotted a tall, dark building at the end of the street. No signs. No logos. Just a single golden plaque near the entrance. Aldridge Security. Her stomach flipped. She had made it. She took a step forward, and a strong hand grabbed her shoulder. She froze. A low voice spoke behind her. "Found you." Her breath hitched. She twisted around, one of the men in suits. He wasn't alone. Another stood nearby, watching her like a wolf waiting to strike. She had been followed. Her mind screamed at her to run, to fight, to do something. But before she could react, the man shoved her forward, toward the Aldrich building. "Go," he ordered. Confused, she stumbled through the entrance. The doors locked behind her. And then she realized, they hadn't captured her. They were bringing her to someone who was already expecting her. A shiver ran down her spine. The doors locked shut behind her with a soft hiss. The girl spun around, her heart racing, but the men who had shoved her inside stayed outside, their faces unreadable through the glass. She was trapped. The lobby was empty, cold, dark, and too clean, like no one had ever actually used it. A long black desk sat near the entrance, but there was no receptionist. No security guards. Just silence. Then, a voice. "I was wondering when you'd show up." She tensed. A figure stepped forward from the shadows near the elevator. A tall woman in a dark suit. Black hair tied back in a sharp ponytail. Eyes like steel. The name on the business card flashed in her mind. K. Aldrich. The woman crossed her arms, scanning her like she was some kind of puzzle to solve. "You're a lot younger than I expected," she said. The girl didn't answer. Her fingers tightened around the wallet in her pocket. She had come here looking for help. But now, something felt wrong. Like this woman had been waiting for her. Aldrich tilted her head. "You're smart. I can see it in your eyes. You know this isn't a coincidence, don't you?" The girl's stomach twisted. Aldrich took a step closer. "The wallet. Hand it over." She took a step back. No, Aldrich's expression didn't change. "You have no idea what you're holding, do you?" The girl swallowed hard. "I know it's his," she said. "Edward Blackwell's." Aldrich exhaled through her nose, like she wasn't impressed. "And do you know where Blackwell is now?" The girl hesitated. Aldrich leaned in slightly. "No. That's what I thought." The girl felt her pulse hammering against her ribs. "Where is he?" she asked. Aldrich smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Gone." The girl froze. "Gone?" she whispered. Aldrich's gaze didn't waver. "The men outside aren't the only ones after you," she said. "Blackwell made powerful enemies. You walking into my building with that wallet?" She shook her head. "That just put a target on your back." The girl's throat tightened. Blackwell was missing. The men chasing her wanted the wallet. Aldrich wasn't acting like a friend. She had just walked into a trap. She glanced at the elevator behind Aldrich. One way in. No way out. Aldrich must have noticed, because her lips curled into a smirk. "Running won't help," she said. "You're in this now. Whether you like it or not." The girl clenched her fists. She had survived on the streets long enough to know one thing: when people told you that you had no choice, it was usually a lie. She always had a choice. Even if it meant doing something crazy. She took a deep breath. And then, she ran straight at Aldrich. The woman barely had time to react. The girl ducked under her arm, darted past her, and slammed her fist against the elevator button. A ding. The doors slid open. Aldrich cursed, lunging after her. But the girl was already inside. She jabbed the top floor button at random. Then smashed the emergency close button. The last thing she saw before the doors shut was Aldrich's furious expression. Then, silence. The elevator began to rise. Her heart pounded. She had no idea where she was going. But one thing was clear, whatever was really going on, Aldridge wasn't going to give her the answers she needed. She needed to find them herself. And that meant finding out what the card in Blackwell's wallet really was. She pulled it out, staring at its glowing surface. It had rejected her before. But what if? She pressed her thumb against the metal again. The blue light flickered. And then, the letters changed. Access granted. Welcome, proxy user. Her breath hitched. Something clicked inside the card. And suddenly, a holographic map projected into the air. A blinking red dot pulsed at the center. A location. Somewhere out in the city. Her fingers curled around the card. Wherever this led. Blackwell had wanted someone to find it. And right now, she was the only one who could. The holographic map flickered, casting a soft blue glow across the steel walls of the elevator. The blinking red dot pulsed steadily, a location somewhere deep in the city. She didn't know what it meant. But Blackwell had left it behind for a reason. And that meant she had to get there. A sudden jolt shook the elevator. Her stomach lurched as the lights flickered, and the smooth hum of the machinery stuttered. Then, the elevator stopped. Dead. Her pulse pounded. A trap? She backed into the corner, gripping the wallet and the strange card, her breath shallow. Then, a voice crackled through a hidden speaker. You're persistent. I'll give you that. Aldridge. The girl's hands tightened into fists. You locked me in here, she demanded. A pause. Then a small chuckle. No, but I should have. You're making things difficult. A deep hum vibrated through the elevator walls. She could feel it under her feet, the power resetting. The girl's mind raced. Aldridge didn't sound angry. Not yet. That meant she still had a chance. She pulled the metal card back out and stared at the blinking location. It could be nothing. Or it could be everything. She took a slow breath. Time for a gamble. I know where Blackwell went, she said. Silence. Then, a sharp inhale from the speaker. Bingo. Aldridge hadn't expected that. The girl's grip tightened. If you want to find him, she continued, you need me. Another pause. When Aldridge spoke again, her tone had changed, calmer, but colder. You really are something, aren't you? The elevator jerked back to life. She stumbled slightly as it started moving again, but now, it wasn't going up. It was going down. Straight to the lobby. Aldridge was letting her go. Or maybe, she was leading her somewhere else. The girl swallowed hard. She had no choice but to find out. The lobby, the doors slid open with a soft chime. Aldridge was waiting. Hands in her pockets. Face unreadable. She nodded toward the exit doors. Go. The girl hesitated. That's it? Aldridge gave her a pointed look. For now. She didn't trust it. But she wasn't going to waste the chance. She turned and ran, straight through the glass doors and out into the cold city air. The men in suits from before? Gone. No sign of them anywhere. She didn't question it. She just ran. The city streets, following the map, she kept to the alleys, moving fast but staying low. The map's blinking red dot guided her through the streets, past empty warehouses, closed-down stores, and abandoned construction sites. Finally, she reached a dead-end alley. The blinking dot stopped moving. She was here. But here was nothing. Just a brick wall. She frowned, turning the metal card over in her fingers. The blue light still pulsed, but there was no door, no building, nothing but bricks. Did she make a mistake? Then, a gust of warm air brushed against her face. Not wind. Not from the street. From somewhere behind the wall. She took a slow step forward and pressed her palm against the bricks. The metal card flashed. Then, the wall slid open. A hidden door. Her breath caught. Whatever this place was, Blackwell wanted someone to find it. She swallowed hard, then stepped inside. The door slid shut behind her. And suddenly, she wasn't alone. A row of glowing screens lined the walls. Stacks of paper sat on steel tables. And at the center of it all, strapped to a chair, was Edward Blackwell. Bruised. Bloodied. Barely conscious. Her stomach twisted. He was alive. But just as relief settled in, a voice echoed from the darkness. Clever girl. She spun around, a tall shadowy figure emerged from the corner, his eyes gleaming in the dim light. He wasn't one of the men in suits. He wasn't Aldrich. And he definitely wasn't a friend. The girl's fingers tightened around the metal card. She had found Blackwell. But now, she was trapped. And whatever was really happening here, it was far from over. Trapped, the shadowy figure stepped forward, the dim light catching the edges of his sharp, angular face. His eyes gleamed with something unsettling, not anger, not fear, but amusement. The girl tensed, her fingers curling around the glowing metal card. She had found Blackwell. But now, she was trapped with someone far more dangerous. Blackwell groaned from the chair, his head lolling forward. He looked weak, beaten down. His hands were tied, his lips split, and a thin trickle of blood ran down his temple. The girl's stomach twisted. She had come all this way, only to walk into another trap. The man studied her like she was a curiosity. Like he had expected someone else. "You're not what I expected," he said finally. His voice was smooth, measured, like a snake waiting to strike. The girl stood her ground. "Who are you?" The man smirked. "The one who should be asking the questions." She swallowed hard but didn't back down. The man turned slightly, gesturing toward Blackwell. "You want to save him, don't you?" The girl said nothing. The man took a slow step closer. "You have something that belongs to me." Her grip tightened on the metal card. The man's gaze flickered to her hand. "Ah," he murmured. "So you've figured it out." The girl didn't move. "Tell me," the man continued. "Did you enjoy the chase? The thrill of playing the hero?" He tilted his head, his smirk widening. "Did you really think finding him would be the end of the story?" The girl's pulse pounded. This wasn't just about the wallet. It was about the card. Blackwell stirred, his voice barely a whisper. "Don't give it to him." The girl froze. The man's smile didn't fade, but his eyes darkened. He knew she had it. But he couldn't take it by force, it only activated when she touched it. That meant she had leverage. But not much. "You're a smart kid," the man said, taking another step forward. "You must realize that card is far beyond anything you understand." The girl swallowed hard. "What does it do?" she asked, stalling for time. The man studied her, then let out a small, amused laugh. "You really don't know?" He shook his head. "Blackwell never told you, did he? He just left breadcrumbs, hoping you'd be foolish enough to follow them." The girl didn't respond. Because, he was right. She had no idea what the card actually was. Only that everyone wanted it. The man's gaze flicked to Blackwell, who was barely holding on to consciousness. "I could end this right now," the man said casually. "Take the card, take him, and you'd never have to worry about any of this again." His voice dropped lower. "But we both know that's not how this story ends." The girl felt her chest tighten. She had come too far to let it end like this. The man sighed, shaking his head. You don't even realize what you're holding, do you? The girl said nothing. The man smirked. Let me help you, then. Before she could react, he snapped his fingers. The room shifted. The lights dimmed, and suddenly, the walls around them flickered, revealing something hidden beneath. Rows of servers lined the room. Screens lit up, showing numbers, symbols, and something that looked like encrypted data scrolling endlessly. This wasn't just a hideout. It was a control center. And the card in her hand, it was the key. She gasped. The man's voice was calm, almost gentle. That card, he said, isn't just some security pass. It holds something far more valuable. The girl's fingers trembled around it. What? She whispered. The man's smile widened. The blueprint to the future. Her mind spun. What did that mean? The man stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. Give it to me, he said. And I'll let you walk away. The girl's heart hammered. She looked at Blackwell. He was barely holding on, but when their eyes met, he gave a weak shake of his head. Don't trust him. She exhaled. And then, she made her decision. She took one step back. The man's smirk faltered. And before he could react, she slammed the card against the nearest console. A loud alarm blared. The screens flickered. The data scrambled. And then, everything shut down. The man's eyes flashed with fury. You little, the girl didn't wait. She grabbed Blackwell's arm, yanked him free from the chair, and ran. The door was still open, but alarms wailed, red lights flashing as the system collapsed. The man shouted orders behind her, but she didn't stop. Blackwell stumbled, too weak to move fast, but she held onto him, dragging him forward. They reached the door, just as the room behind them exploded in sparks. She didn't look back. She just ran into the night. A life lesson that will never be forgotten. Hours later, the girl sat on a rooftop, breathing hard. Blackwell lay beside her, his breathing steadying. They were safe. For now. The city stretched before them, glowing with neon lights. The card was gone, destroyed when she hit the system. She didn't understand everything about what had happened. But she knew one thing. She had been nobody. A homeless girl, invisible to the world. But one choice, one moment of honesty, had changed everything. She had stopped something bigger than herself. She had proven that even the smallest person could make a difference. And Blackwell? He finally stirred, opening his eyes, and looked at her with something she hadn't seen before. Respect. Kid, he rasped, voice weak but certain. You just changed the world. The city stretched out below them, neon lights flickering in the distance. The girl sat on the rooftop, her legs dangling over the edge. The night was quiet, but her mind was anything but. Beside her, Blackwell groaned, struggling to sit up. His face was still bruised, his body weak, but he was alive. She had saved him. But at what cost? The metallic card, the thing that had started all of this, was gone, destroyed the moment she slammed it into the system. She had watched the screens flicker and die, the hidden files erase themselves, the entire facility fall into darkness. She had shut them down. But something about it didn't feel finished. Blackwell must have sensed her unease because he let out a ragged breath and turned his head toward her. You did good, kid, he murmured. She frowned. Then why does it feel like it's not over? Blackwell hesitated. Because it wasn't. The girl's fingers curled into fists. The man back there, the one who had you, who was he? Blackwell was silent for a long moment. Then he exhaled and ran a shaking hand through his disheveled hair. His name is Caldwell, he finally said. He works for people who like to stay in the dark. People who think the world should run by their rules. The girl's stomach twisted. But you had something they wanted, she said slowly. Blackwell nodded. That card, it wasn't just data. It was access. The girl frowned. Access to what? Blackwell turned to look at her, his eyes filled with something heavy. The world, he said. She blinked. What? He sighed. That card was connected to something bigger. A system that controls information, government records, financial power, private security clearances, everything. Her breath caught. You mean it could control people? Blackwell nodded. And you just destroyed it. The girl's hands felt cold. Had she really done that? Had she really just erased something that powerful? She had thought it was just a key, maybe a security pass. But if Blackwell was telling the truth, that card wasn't just valuable. It was dangerous. She hugged her arms around herself. So that means Caldwell and his people. They'll be looking for another way to take control, Blackwell finished. They always do. The girl exhaled, feeling the weight of everything she had just done. She had stopped them, this time. But power like that? It never really disappears. She looked at Blackwell. What happens now? He studied her for a long moment before giving her a tired smile. You've got two choices, kid. She waited. You can walk away. Disappear. Go back to your life. She frowned. That life? The one where she was cold and hungry and invisible to the world? The life where she had no one? No. That wasn't her life anymore. Blackwell must have seen the answer in her eyes because he gave a knowing nod. Or, he said, you can help me make sure people like Caldwell don't get another chance. Her heart pounded. He wasn't just offering her a way out. He was offering her a purpose. A way to fight back. A way to make sure that no one else would ever have to be powerless like she had been. The city below them stretched endlessly, the world still turning, still full of people who had no idea what had almost happened. But she knew. She had stopped it. And if it happened again? She would be ready. She turned to Blackwell. And for the first time in her life, she knew exactly what she wanted. I'm in. Blackwell's smile was small but genuine. Good, he said. Because this was just the beginning. The city lights stretched far into the horizon, flickering like stars in a sky turned upside down. The girl sat on the rooftop's edge, the wind brushing against her skin. The weight of the night, the chase, the fight, the truth, it all sat heavy in her chest. Beside her, Blackwell breathed steadily, recovering from the bruises and the exhaustion. He wasn't the same powerful lawyer from the ID card she had found in his wallet. No, he was something more now, a man who had seen how power worked behind the scenes and had fought to stop it. And her? She had been a homeless girl, invisible to the world. A girl who had picked up a wallet and made a choice that changed everything. Blackwell exhaled and turned to her. You still sure about this? She nodded. She didn't know what her future looked like, but she knew one thing for certain, she wasn't going back to the life she had before. You were right, she said, staring down at the city. This isn't over. Blackwell chuckled softly, though it sounded tired. It never really is. She thought about everything she had learned. The secrets hidden in plain sight, the powerful people who moved in the shadows, the choices that changed more than just one life. And then she thought about something deeper. She had lived her whole life believing that she was small. That the world didn't care about people like her. But now? She had proof that one person could matter. That one act of honesty, one moment of courage, could set off a chain reaction bigger than anyone could predict. She had been nobody. Now she was something more. Blackwell stretched his legs out, watching the sky shift into the first shades of dawn. "There's something I learned a long time ago," he said, his voice thoughtful. "Power doesn't come from money. Or influence. Or even fear." She turned to him, listening. "It comes from knowing that, no matter what, you always have a choice." She let those words sink in. The man in the suit, Caldwell, had tried to convince her that she had no control. That people like him would always win. But he was wrong. She had made a choice. And that choice had changed everything. She looked down at the city below. Somewhere, people were waking up, never knowing how close they had come to losing their freedom to men who worked in the dark. But she knew. And now? She was going to make sure it never happened again. She pulled Blackwell's wallet from her pocket and turned it over in her hands. It all started with this. A simple wallet. A choice. A life changed forever. She let out a slow breath and placed it beside him. "Guess you'll be needing this back." Blackwell smirked. "Keep it." She frowned. "Why?" His expression softened. "Because it's not mine anymore." She understood what he meant. She wasn't just some kid who got caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. She was someone who had made a difference. Someone who mattered. She closed her fingers around the wallet, her first real belonging. Her first real proof that she had a place in this world. A faint streak of sunlight touched the tops of the buildings, and she smiled. For the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid of tomorrow. Because now, she had a reason to face it head-on.